Ugh, what have I done to deserve this fate? Like established before, the original Batman film continuity has been split into 2 videos as opposed to 1. Last time we looked at the 2 Batman films directed by Tim Burton, and today we're looking at the 2 directed by Joel Schumacher. 1995's Batman Forever and 1997's Batman and Robin. The latter of which is credited as almost completely killing the superhero movie genre for a short period of time. But before I get ahead of myself, let me make something clear. This video is not intended to disrespect the work and vision of the recently passed Joel Schumacher. His mission above all else was to just make entertaining Batman movies for the whole family.
If there's anybody watching this that, let's say, loved Batman Forever and went into Batman and Robin with great anticipation, if I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them.
Now, whether or not this was a success is what we're here to talk about today. Given the nature of internet fanboys, I can only imagine how much hate he's endured for making Batman and Robin, but it's not deserved. On this show, we review products, not people or their intentions. I wouldn't usually say this sort of thing up front, but given Joel Schumacher's passing, I figured it'd be worth mentioning at the top. Having said that, let's backtrack a bit and get into the video proper. In the last episode, I discussed how Tim Burton's Batman was such a monumental occasion. It was a smash hit, plain and simple. The massive advertising campaign surrounding it played a massive role in its success. It helped that it was a great movie as well. Tim Burton returned to helm the sequel, Batman Returns, to theaters, and he made the follow-up to the summer blockbuster that was Batman '89, a lot darker, more psychologically driven, more violent, more definitively Tim Burton. My main issue with that movie was its scatterbrained plot, but that was not what mattered most back in the day. Batman Returns had a massive ad campaign like the first film, however things did not go over well as you had McDonald's promoting a movie to children that when they go to see it, shows a man's nose being bitten to the point of gushing blood, body horror like Penguin's death or Selina's rebirth, and the list goes on. It was just a bad look for WB, and while they still had Tim Burton listed as the producer for the third entry, whatever that means, he was not the director. But he did give the go-ahead to the new director, Joel Schumacher, who wanted Batman to go in a lighter direction, which pleased the studio heads, but still wanted to explore the duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman. And thus, Batman Forever was born, hitting the screens in 1995. But what about the Dark Knight himself, Michael Keaton? Well, he was set to reprise his role, but when he learned of the direction the project was taking, he bailed. In 2017, he just said, and I quote, "It sucked," in regards to why he didn't want to come back for Batman Forever. So that ought to start us off in a great note. So the film begins. It doesn't seem so bad so far, right? Oh my god, what happened to the Batmobile? It looks so cool in the previous ones. I mean, I guess it got all screwed up in the previous movie, but why does it look like a toy? That's foreshadowing for all you keeping track at home. Then this happens.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through.
What the? Have you ever heard of a trailer line? You know, like this?
She with you?
I thought she was with you.
Even though it makes no sense in the actual movie. This is a commercial line. Maybe it was supposed to be funny, but the first thing I thought when I heard that corny line was, I wonder if that was in the McDonald's commercial, and lo and behold.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through. Introducing McDonald's Superhero Burger. Tomatoes, crisp lettuce, the great taste of 2 cheeses melted over 3 beef patties on a superhero bun. It's McDonald's Taste of the Month. Everyone's making a break for.
Welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order?
I completely forgot most of this movie before watching it now, as I haven't seen it in ages at this point, but don't expect the cheese factor to end anytime soon. This movie isn't lightening the mood like, say, Sly 3. This movie is a complete 180 tone shift. The visual design of this film is nothing like the previous films, as Batman 1 had a distinct, used, trashy look to the city with Batman Returns bringing that back, but with the Christmas aesthetic on top of it. Here, Gotham is decorated in bright neon lights, which only gets more distracting in the sequel. But if you want me to buy that this is the same universe as Batman Returns, well then I'm just sorry, I don't see it. Which actually doesn't have anything to do with the new Batman, Val Kilmer. I actually think he pulls off a pretty decent performance in this movie, as his character's played very straight, and so we get to see him give an honest effort to be Bruce Wayne and Batman, and I think what we have is good. I mean, there are the cheesy one-liners, but when DCAU Batman had one of those, I was practically clapping in my seat. Even in Batman Returns, lines like this existed.
Eat floor. High fiber.
No, what makes this movie a complete departure from the previous entries is just the tone. There is just no way that the world of Batman Returns becomes the world of Batman Forever, which was done on purpose as Joel Schumacher wanted this movie to be more his own style and thought it would add some dimension and some life to Gotham City by showing us that the city clearly hired the same architect as Red White from the first Ace Attorney. Batman himself thought it'd be a great idea to add nipples to his costume, and while I would freak out about it like the rest of the internet, say, a year ago, I've thought about it a little more and I've come to a new conclusion. Overt sexualization of male characters in primarily male-dominated audience movies isn't that common, and if it is, it's a lot more flattering than, say, bat nipples and bat asses. All I'm gonna say is that I don't really complain about sexualization of female characters if there's something to that character besides that, so I'm not going to lose my mind over bat nipples, although I just think it looks dumb. But there are much bigger issues than that. While this movie tries to explore Batman's psychology, the film puts no effort in doing that for its villains. Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face and Jim Carrey as the Riddler. Two characters that are a good fit for a movie that seek to question what Batman really is, Bruce or Batman, as Two-Face is literally a man split in half, and the Riddler has let his obsessions devour his whole life to the point of criminality. Batman is better than his foes because he walks the edge of that mental abyss every night, but never falls in because of a strong moral conviction. But instead, they just made Two-Face and Riddler complete cartoon characters. Like, it's funny. Batman the Animated Series took on a serious tone to be in line with the Burton movies, but here we have these live-action films that are straight-up cartoons when the actual cartoon at the time is dealing with heavy psychological themes. Now, Jim Carrey's fine. I mean, when you cast him, you're not exactly expecting a real multifaceted and layered character. He just has to be entertaining, and he certainly was that. You know, something I've always loved about Jim Carrey is that he plays these really loud and in-your-face characters, but certainly seems really down-to-earth and happy to be working on such great franchises and behind-the-scenes material. Anyway, a lot of the time I spent laughing at this movie were times where I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be laughing or if I'm laughing in a so bad it's good kind of way. Like how Commissioner Gordon has gone from a normal character to a goofball, comes running in his pajamas when the new love interest shines the bat signal, or when he cheers like a fanboy when Batman shows up in the climax. Or these really weird faces the characters keep making in close-ups. Have a montage of a couple moments in this movie where I was just thinking the only thing missing would be the piped-in laugh track.
I'll get drive-through.
Oh no! It's boiling acid! Sucking up your IQ. Vacuuming the cortex. Feeding off your brain.
It's the car, right? Chicks love the car.
Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face alone should separate the continuity between movies, as Harvey Dent was played by Billy D. Williams in Batman '89, and he wanted to play a serious version of Two-Face in a later sequel, probably like the one seen on Batman the Animated Series. But instead, he isn't even in Batman Returns at all, and gets recast as Tommy Lee Jones, now playing this cartoon character whose sole motivation for the entire movie is to just kill Batman, when the accident that caused him wasn't even really Batman's fault and is barely dealt with in the story, so needless to say, he barely has a motivation at all. I can really appreciate what they did with the Riddler in this movie, even if it's cartoonier than the previous villains, but I seriously thought Two-Face sucked in this. Not because of TLJ, but because they went with such an eccentric direction for his character. Great movies put a lot of thought into set design, and a character's room can tell you a lot about that character, like the Riddler, for example. At his starting point, he has this narrow hallway of an apartment. His character is narrow-minded, all the while being full of big ideas. They're doing that with Two-Face, but in a way where I find it so overdone, like how his lair is literally in two halves, light and dark. He has 2 girlfriends, an angel and a devil, and 2 dinners and 2 cigars. Come on. This movie might seem more focused than Batman Returns, but in my opinion, it's just as messy. So let's look at this. In Batman Forever, we have several plot lines. 1. Two-Face wants to kill Batman. 2. Riddler sells his evil device and makes a load of cash on it. 3. Riddler wants to help Two-Face kill Batman. 4. Batman deals with psychological issues with Dr. Meridian. 5. Two-Face kills the Graysons as Dick is taken in by Bruce and they learn to get along. And 6. Dick Grayson becomes Robin and wants to kill Two-Face for killing his family. For a film that's only an hour and 50-something minutes of actual content, that's just way too much. You can just barely squeeze those first 4 ideas into the film, but then Robin is completely tacked on. His whole character arc is worthy of a film in its own right, but dealing with that, and 2 villains teaming up, and Batman's own issues, it just doesn't work. Like how Batman scolds Robin for being reckless after his first appearance as Robin when all he did was show up after the bad guys got away and saved Batman's life. Cut to them arguing in the Batcave. Chris O'Donnell as Robin wasn't like the worst thing ever, but I just found his performance to be really over the top. Like he just doesn't come off as natural to me. It doesn't help that he was like 25 at the time of the film's release, when he's supposed to be, what, 17? I say it with a question mark since Robin is usually a kid when Bruce Wayne takes him in. I thought the whole point was that Batman saw himself in a young boy losing his family and he would work to make sure he didn't go through what Bruce himself did. But with a kid that's already an adult practically, that dynamic is completely different. Although from behind the scenes, the reason they did it was for the sake of believability, which makes sense as BTIS did the same thing, but it does detract from the strength of the narrative in my opinion, as Batman the Animated Series knew this as well, making the Robin origin story still have him be a kid, because they did it in a flashback. But you can't do that in this continuity because the previous films just didn't have any sign of Robin at all. With this Batman telling off Robin for wanting to kill Two-Face, being willing to take a life, despite the Batman of the previous films, who is supposedly the same guy, doing that all the time. For more characters than just the Joker, mind you, who killed his parents. They kind of allude to that as Bruce promises killing Two-Face won't bring Robin any relief. Speaking from experience, it sounds, but again, this is not focused on enough to be interesting. I found out in the comments of my announcement post to this video that there actually exists a longer cut of this movie with some deleted scenes. The Schumacher cut, if you will. Featuring this scene in the Batcave with Bruce and a giant bat, or this one where Dick's training and Bruce trying to talk him out of the revenge mission.
Dick, don't let the love of your family twist into hatred of Two-Face. That's too easy.
Like, scenes such as this give me the impression there was more to this movie than the final cut allowed for, but again, the foundation isn't working anyway because Robin's obsession is driving him towards killing a cartoon character that the audience couldn't take seriously no matter what. Even if.
I actually witnessed him kick a puppy! Twice!
I wanted to dive more into Bruce's psychology angle now, but of anything, I can only think of the fact that Dr. Chase Meridian wanted to learn more about the minds of Bruce Wayne and Batman while also trying to get into their pants, or, to quote Batman,
"You're trying to get under my cape, Doctor?"
is a bit silly from a professional, and I like the idea that all of Batman's trauma has ended up with him saying that he's both Bruce Wayne and Batman because he chooses to be. Beyond that, I don't have much to say about this part of the movie at all. I think giving Batman a character arc beats the first Batman movie because he didn't really have one there, but this cluttered story just doesn't give me much to chew on. Besides that, I don't really know what else to tell you about Batman Forever. It's a colorful movie, the direction is flashy, that definitely leaves the mark of the director on the work, but the script is corny, the story is cluttered mess that leaves little to be enjoyed personally, any complexities that could be there are underdeveloped or are just completely cartoony to the point of absurdity. Like, I just don't think that this movie worked. I mean, I don't think it's the worst thing ever. It's not Superman 3. But despite whatever the intention of the story was, I just think the movie is plainly dumb. The movie just kind of ends as well. Batman and Robin are partners now, even though this was barely set up. The climax is a total bust because I was bored out of my mind with this cliche setup of the two hostages. The villains learn Batman's identity, but Two-Face dies and Riddler's brain is fried from the machine, so it's a non-issue now. Robin doesn't even appear in the ending. We just find out that Riddler doesn't remember who Batman is. Batman's happy to hear it. Cut to this shot. The end. Like, that's it? Watching this 50-minute behind-the-scenes video made me appreciate the artistry behind Batman Forever a lot more than I did before. Movies like this just don't make themselves. It takes hundreds of people working hard and consistently to produce something like this, and for that reason I respect that aspect of Batman Forever, I just did not enjoy the movie. At the end of the day, it really isn't a total failure, as after all, it made a boatload of money at the box office, completely saving face from Batman Returns, but I just think that this movie is really lame and stupid for most of its runtime, and I hope to never see it again. But remember how the first Batman being a hit led to Burton going all in on the sequel? Well, the same happened here, and that's how we got 1997's Batman and Robin. The movie that killed the genre. Let's get into this steaming pile. Batman and Robin. Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, was really bad in the way that it killed a lot of appeal in superhero movies, but Batman 89 brought it back and then some. Funny how history repeats itself, since the answer to the corny Superman 4 was Batman 89, and now in 1997 we have Batman and Robin. You know, I have to ask what it's like re-releasing terrible products. Like when you have to port Mega Man X7 to modern consoles, like everyone knows it sucks. Same goes for repackaging Batman and Robin again and again as if it's a serious movie. At that same time, it was still a film that took quite a lot of time and effort to make, but the audience spoke with their wallets. This movie is the worst performing of all the live-action WB-owned Batman movies, proving that you can't just release whatever. With Batman and Robin, the project was basically doomed from the start. A lot of the production team behind Batman Forever had returned, but had also commented on how quick the turnaround was between sequels, coming out only 2 years after Forever, when the previous sequels came out 3 years after the movie before them. Which is part of why Val Kilmer did not return as Batman in this one, instead being played by George Clooney, but I can return to that later. Everyone wanted a piece of this movie, because it's another family-friendly Batman, and who doesn't want to see a piece of that advertising revenue? The making of Batman and Robin video was quite informative. I thought the same for Batman Forever, but that gave me a greater insight on that film. No, this one just illuminated how bad the movie was. Let's listen to what the director had to say.
In Batman and Robin, there was a real desire at the studio to keep it more family-friendly, more kid-friendly. And, a word I had never heard before, more toyetic, which means that what you create makes toys that can sell.
We involved the toy company. We let them look and be involved in how the Batmobile was going to look, how Batman's gadgets were going to be.
Toyetic. They wanted to make it more toyetic. So when you pointlessly design a new Batmobile, make sure it looks like an action figure could be made right off of it. Give the team silver costumes in the climax because that will sell more variant figures.
Batman and Robin. Ice Terror Mr. Freeze launches a chilling strike. Blastwing Batman whips his massive cape to cut down the cold criminal. Now Robin comes with his Redbird cycle to put evil on ice as Batgirl blasts in to send Freeze to the cooler. Batman and Robin. Vehicles come with figures. Blastwing Batman sold separately.
Superhero movies like the Avengers are often criticized for being toy commercials, but in my opinion, Thanos having an Infinity Gauntlet serves a function in the movie that is straight from the comics. That gauntlet or Thor's hammer make for great figures to sell to kids, but I don't mind that because the gauntlet or new Iron Man armor doesn't exist purely to sell toys. It's there for a reason and just so happens to make for good merchandise. Here's Chris O'Donnell as Robin telling us what he thought.
First movie, things felt much sharper and more focused, and it just felt like everything got a little softer on the second one. The first one, I felt like I was making a movie. The second one, I felt like I was making a toy commercial.
With the first one, I thought we were making a movie. With this one, I thought we were making a toy commercial. If there's one thing I can say about Batman and Robin, it's that it's all over the place in tone and writing. As established, this movie's a giant toy commercial in disguise, but it's also a few sex scenes away from belonging on Pornhub.
I'll help you grab your rocks. There's something about an anatomically correct rubber suit that puts fire in a girl's lips.
Why are all the gorgeous ones homicidal maniacs? Is it me?
This movie was so stretched for time that they had a whole division designing Poison Ivy, and we get Uma Thurman in this ridiculously underdesigned and ugly attire, and then Mr. Freeze, who looks terribly overdesigned. Which brings me to the story. This film is the most cluttered Batman movie of the bunch. Here are the plots. 1. Batman and Robin have trust issues. 2. Robin is sick of being in Batman's shadow. 3. Mr. Freeze is trying to steal diamonds to keep his suit going. 4. Mr. Freeze's wife is dying and needs a cure. 5. Alfred's also dying of what Nora Freeze has. 6. Barbara comes to town, her plot creates Batgirl. 7. Poison Ivy wants to protect plants over humans. 8. Bane is a thing. 9. Poison Ivy and Freeze team up. And 10. Ivy pulls the plug on Nora Freeze and blames Batman. 10 storylines. Admittedly, many of these are closely related. This movie's just so overwritten to the point of exhaustion. Let's look at these. Batman and Robin have trust issues. Not much to say other than Robin's a punk and a really annoying one at that.
It's Batman and Robin, not Robin and Batman, and I'm sick of it.
George Clooney is Batman, an actor who's been doing a lot of interesting movies over his career, and while I really don't think he's an ideal Batman casting, I would be interested to see him try to play the character in a serious movie, as I do think he has a good look for Bruce Wayne, maybe not as good as Val Kilmer did, but still. However, it's not just this movie being a farce that ruins it. It's the entire direction they wanted to take Bruce Wayne in that kills the Clooney Batman.
Clooney played a warm and fuzzy Bruce Wayne. Kind of the guy next door, the guy that all the women love. And it was a completely different interpretation of Bruce Wayne.
The guy next door? Okay, so on paper, is it a bad idea to have a Batman with no trauma? Yes. This is a fundamentally bad idea. Yes, Batman is a 30-something guy with more money than you'll ever need, a plethora of fancy gadgets, fights criminals every night, and dates the most gorgeous women in the world. Oh, actually, I forgot about that. Batman has a new love interest in this movie. That's plotline number 11, where she's pressuring him to marry her. They say behind the scenes, if you just don't tell the audience that Batman's parents died, then you can just tell a campy story. But I just don't think that idea works. Batman doesn't fight crime because he has, quote, cool toys. He does it because he feels an undying motivation to avenge the death of his parents. Now, I said in the previous video that I can tolerate Batman killing people in certain incarnations, but of course, I think that's more down to the execution. Here, I think the execution of the guy next door Batman sucks, but it's also in the same continuity as Batman, Batman Returns, and even Batman Forever. It was in that movie's behind the scenes where they told us that Batman's psychological issues made him interesting. The fact that the city is better off if Bruce Wayne is a damaged person who deals with trauma in an unhealthy way. So they aren't even going against the work of Burton alone, it's the work of the previous film, which was made by almost the exact same team of people. When it comes to a campy Batman, I don't mind it, I actually think it's fun, but I think it's at its most fun if Batman himself is played straight in a world gone crazy. Despite being one of the titular characters, I don't have much to say about Robin in this, I just think he's annoying. Batgirl is also in this movie, and she's not related to Commissioner Gordon in this one because God forbid you make him a serious character.
Batman, a new villain has commandeered the Gotham Museum. He's calling himself Mr. Freeze.
Mr. Freeze.
What we have is Barbara being the niece of Alfred and is trying to save him from a life of slavery at the hand of Bruce Wayne, only learn this isn't the case, and she becomes Batgirl because her parents died in a car crash, because I guess parents dying of anything, including something random like that, is a cause to be a bat person. A quote from Batman himself.
Batgirl.
That's not awfully PC. What about bat person or bat woman?
Bruce, it's me.
Guess we'll just have to kill her.
Yep, we'll kill her later. We have work to do.
The part where she learns the truth might be the dumbest part of the whole movie. She keeps guessing Alfred's secret password and then sees the name written on the photo of her mother on the table, and she tries that. Peg as the password, gets in, and now knows all the secrets of Batman and Robin. Because Alfred safeguarded all the info of the duo with a 3-letter password. But then an AI Alfred reveals that he knew this would happen and designed the Batgirl suit in advance. Like, does this not sound stupid to anyone watching this? Alfred dying is a scenario that could be a cause of good drama and scenes, and to the movie's credit, it is. However, Mr. Freeze reveals he does have the cure for Alfred's stage of the disease at the end of the movie, and he's cured. You could call that lazy writing, but I don't really care because by this point, I just wanted it to end. That, and Batman genuinely appealing to Freeze's humanity in the ending is pretty close to a BTAS episode, so I'll take it. Speaking of which, Mr. Freeze is played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, I know it wasn't a good idea, but let's talk about it. The real problem with Mr. Freeze is that I don't think the people involved really stopped to think about how his character would be portrayed. Like, they said they wanted Mr. Freeze to be scary in this, and yet this is his design. Then there's the dialogue, as Freeze spends a total of 4 minutes spouting ice puns across the entire movie. That sounds like it's not a lot, but an ice pun takes like 5 seconds to say, and the amount of puns totals at 4 minutes. Let's just sit through 1 minute of that.
The Iceman cometh. I'm afraid that my condition has left me cold to your pleas of mercy. In this universe, there's only one absolute. Everything freezes. You are not sending me to the cooler. What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age! Can you feel it coming? The icy cold of space. Freeze well. Stay cool, bird boy. Can you be cold, Batman? All right, everyone. Chill. Chill. Hell freezes over.
Freeze. Heat is on.
They decided to give us the BTAS Freeze backstory as Batman the Animated Series basically turned Freeze into a whole new character with the wife storyline. But it's completely out of place in this movie. Freeze goes from directing a choir of I'm Mr. White Christmas to lamenting his sick wife, and then goes back to more ice jokes, and saying lines like this.
Kill the heroes!
And then right after that we get a game from the hockey team from hell.
It's the hockey team from hell!
This movie is terrible, seriously. Besides that, I feel like I've said all that I need to say on this one. Like, Ivy's here for sexual references, Bane, the smartest villain, is just a mindless brute, the action is terrible, the suits and designs are bad, everything is designed for the sake of selling toys, and so the movie basically amounts to an obnoxious cacophony, ending the original Batman movie continuity on a film that's completely unrecognizable from the first film.
We're going to need a bigger cave.
I'd like to think my Wi-Fi disconnected there because I got sick of the movie. And those were the Joel Schumacher Batman films. Do I need to comment on how these movies impacted superhero films? I guess not, but I don't want the ending of the video to be too abrupt, so let's look at it. Superman 4 sucked, right? Yeah, well, Batman and Robin sucked as well, and it got the reception it deserved.
Boy, was I shocked by the new Batman movie. It's so overproduced. Every scene is so action-filled that the movie does all of the thinking and emoting for us, and you just sit there looking at dazzling effects, yes, but you still feel bored. Add to that an unending parade of leering, double entendre jokes centered on the male anatomy, and you have an extravagant, often tasteless bore. I saw plenty of walkouts at the public screening I attended, and I would have been there with them.
It is true that the action sequences are so busy that you can't get involved in them.
Not at all.
They're too hard to follow. It's like there's a pinball machine with all 5 balls on the machine at the same time.
But this movie was also way bigger than Superman 4. I still like Batman and Robin more than Superman 3, mind you, but that's just my opinion. With a blockbuster as big as Batman and Robin being so terrible and loud and obnoxious, it really made you think, what are these movies for? Are superhero films real attempts to bring great material to the screen, or are they just overly produced toy commercials? I like when a director's influence can be felt on a movie, which is why I now have a soft spot for Batman Forever despite its shortcomings. But Batman and Robin is a giant mess that killed off the Batman film continuity and paved the way for Batman Begins, which created the reboot wave we've seen ever since. Batman 89 was avoiding Batman's reputation of being campy from the Adam West series, but the entire superhero genre, if it was ever going to bounce back from a film as bad as Batman and Robin, it would have to avoid the tonality of this film like the plague. But that's a story for another day. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.